All right, everybody. I hope you're feeling smart because we've got novelist, very best-selling novelist and Harvard-trained neuroscientist Lisa Genova. Did I get it right on the show,
Got it
Lisa?
right.
Hey, how you doing, Lisa?
I'm great, Bill. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We're talking about more or less Maddie. Okay, uh, fifth novel, sixth novel,
Sixth novel, seventh book.
fifth novel, seventh book. Okay. Whew, well, we got a lot to talk about. You are a part of a small family of writers who come from the science background and then who've gone from right brain to left brain, or is it left brain? You would know. Left brain to right brain, which is it? I
I
always
mean,
get it
it's
mixed up.
it's grossly sort of over
I know.
dramatized there, but yeah, left to right,
Okay, so you've gone from left to right. I
not
always,
politically.
okay,
Just to,
good to
just to
know
clarify.
these days. um,
Don't take that out of context.
uh, Well, it's worth noting because I always find it fascinating because I coach writers, one of the things I do. And sometimes I coach people who come from a sort of sciencey background and they want to go into creative writing. And it's not always easy for them
Right.
because the way they deal with language and ideas and just it's a hard leap to make, but it's one you made. Um, my question first to all past scientists who become novelists is where was the novelist while you were going to Harvard getting your PhD? Busy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What was the novelist doing at that time?
Um, Reading.
Yeah,
Always been a reader.
yeah.
Always been curious. And I wouldn't say I'm fearless, but because I'm afraid at the beginning of every book I write, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
At the beginning of every chapter, if it's the first third of the book, I'm afraid. But willing to overcome those fears to do something exciting or fun or interesting. And so while I was always very good at math and science and I was very driven to become a neuroscientist, I'm still endlessly fascinated with how our brains work, and what happens when things go wrong. I was also, I always loved theater. I didn't act through high school or in college, but I jumped back into acting actually the same time I was writing Still Alice. So I did a lot of acting in Boston on stage. Um,
Really?
yeah, in fact, I think acting taught me how to write.
Okay.
'Cause I never took a writing class, but I
Right.
was acting at the same time I was trying to write this first novel of mine, and it's so much of what I learned in my acting training applies beautifully to the page.
So I agree. Like I think I do a bunch of different art forms, or I've done a bunch of different art forms.
Yeah.
I think they all overlap. But, acting is a performance art, and I think there's a performance element to writing as well. I did theater as well. But talk to me about how that helped you. What specifically was it? What was it that you
Yeah,
tapped into?
and interestingly, performance-wise, I've always been a dancer.
Huh? Oh,
And
okay.
I still dance. So like just being able to physically be in your body,
Hmm.
there's, something helpful to that too. Like what does it feel like in your body? Where is it? But acting for me, it's the things that sort of crossed over were things like you're always raising the stakes as high as possible whenever possible. What do people want from each other? Who's getting it? Who's not? How are people changed by what happens? And then you're always telling the truth under the imagined circumstances. That's like my North Star.
That's beautifully said. Yeah, and did you learn that in a way because in by being a part of a story being told under recognizing the way the story unfolded and the way the drama was, or certainly the truth under what's said, that's a fundamental to acting, of course, that you want to know what's really going on.
Yeah.
But you were maybe understanding drama in a way you hadn't until you were a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. And just like a lot of the again in your body, so you're not pretending to be grief stricken, you're not pretending to be
Right.
in a rage, you're not pretending to be in love. Like you're being asked to spontaneously feel these things in the moment in response to what happens. So they can't be um you can prepare but you can't plan.
I like it. I
Ooh,
like it.
right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. That's
So,
exactly
like,
right.
same with writing, like, you want to show up with all the research I've done and all the
Right.
preparation. But then when I get there, I really want to be in those sensory moment to moment details and and feel and discover what could happen next.
Oh,
Yeah.
amen. Amen. Because you can't, you want to show up. I remember I was in Death of a Salesman. I was doing the show, and the guy who plays Biff, this big scene where Biff confronts the Willie and breaks down and cries and calls him a loser and a fake. And I always thought the guy did a good job, but he came off afterwards, and I watched him. I was playing Hap. I was playing the other brother, and he came off, and he was very angry. He said, I faked it. Because he imitated the way he had done it when he was doing it for real.
Yeah.
And I felt that as a writer sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah, it
I'm just
doesn't feel good.
imitating
Yeah.
myself.
No, you can't lie to your readers. They'll feel
No,
it.
that's right.
Yeah, and you'll feel it.
It
Like,
feels better when it's inspired, when you're discovering. Otherwise, it's no fun.
yeah.
Okay, so the moment, all right, so you get your PhD.
Yep.
Boom. All right. You've got the Harvard degree. I mean, you're all stamped and ready to go. You got a whole life ahead of you. Uh, and so you started doing some kind of work, I assume, as a neuroscientist somewhere, doing, I don't know what, teaching, helping,
Yeah,
what were you doing?
well, so I originally I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to teach at a small liberal arts school like I went to undergrad. So I went to
Mhm.
Bates College, and I didn't want to be a big university professor who's just writing endless grants
Right.
and spending their time really doing that. Those jobs are hard to come by because there's like one neuroscience professor at
Right.
that college, and they're very happy, and they're not retiring anytime soon. So I did look at postdocs in the Boston area, and I was kind of burned out. I had been doing research at the National Institute of Health, and I'd been working literally 7 days a week.
Right. Oh, wow.
So I took a little turn, and my first turn in my career, and I worked as a strategy consultant for biotech, medical device, and pharmaceutical companies for a while
Big
until my daughter
money.
was born.
Big
Yeah, I
money.
made some money. And it was cool. It was problem solving. It was
Yeah.
fast paced. It was a lot
Yeah.
of smart people like working together, which was something new as a
Nice.
scientist because as
Yeah.
scientists we work alone. So,
Yeah.
which was great training for a novelist, by
Yes,
the
it is.
way.
Yeah, it is. All
So
right. So
yeah.
talk to me about the moment then. So you're doing all this.
Yep.
Then you're going to take a right turn, left turn. I don't know what turn, but you're
I
taking a
didn't turn.
turn.
Yeah.
Um, was that scary a little bit? Like, geez, was there some part of your brain saying, "What is wrong with you, Lisa? You've committed all this time and money and everything to this, and now you want to go do that?"
A little bit. It was a little because I really did imagine myself as a professor for a long time, and then but it didn't feel like it was burning any bridges, and it was
Okay.
it was fun and exciting. It really was. I at times was working on brain related developments, and that felt exciting. But whether I was working on a drug to treat renal failure or diabetes or a
Right.
blood apheresis device, it was all having to do with how the brain and body work. So I understand, whether it's the brain or another part of the body, I can play in that playground. So it was fun. And I didn't think I'd do it forever. It was just, well,
Right.
let's try this for a little bit. I was young. I was still, what was I? I was in my late 20s.
All right. So it's an interesting thing that when we're young, we're so just like the way, well, as you know, the
Good times.
neuroplasticity we just learn and learn. And you just kind of we opened ourselves up to so many different things. So that's awesome. So you started writing. Now, the first novel you published was still Alice, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So was that the first novel you wrote?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. Very impressive. But you little worker bee, you didn't find a traditional publisher. You didn't look for one. How did
No,
that
I
go?
did.
Yeah, well,
I
of
didn't
course you
want to
did.
I self-published it because I had the choice was either stick it in a drawer and go find a neuroscience job
Right.
or self-publish it because I had set I did not want to self-publish. As a scientist, you want gatekeepers, you want peer reviewers,
You're used
I
to
don't
it.
want to be in this pool of people where anyone can publish anything because there's going to
Right.
be a lot of garbage in there and I didn't want to, be part of that really.
Yeah.
But I had sent out 100 query letters to literary agents, and I heard back mostly, "Dear author, no thank you." So never made it, they didn't read the manuscript. I heard back, "Yes, I'll read the manuscript" from three. One I
From
never heard back
three.
from. Three
Three.
agents. Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of agents out there kicking themselves right
I
now.
know. It's like that scene from Pretty Woman when Julia Roberts goes back to the store where they wouldn't wait on her, and she's like, "You work on commission, right?" Big mistake. So yeah, the two that read it said, "Well, I don't know. It's like fiction market's different than nonfiction, and you've got this PhD in neuroscience. Why are you writing fiction? Like, write a nonfiction book about
Oh
Alzheimer's, and
God,
we'll take a look
God,
at that."
God, God, shut up. Shut up. This drives me crazy. Look at here's what I say. This is just as a reminder
Okay.
to all of the people listening. Not you. You've learned this
All
on
right.
your own. But the people listening, publishing professionals are wonderful people, a lot of them, and they know a lot, but they don't know everything. They don't know everything. And the one thing they don't know is the sometimes is the power of the person's desire over the is the most practical path, the one that you're most passionate about. So, okay. So you said, I'm going to publish on my own. Now, that's a tricky choice. That must have been a hard pill to swallow in a way, but you must have really believed in the book.
It was, and I did. I mean, I had enough people who I trusted who wouldn't have blown smoke up my butt to say,
Right.
"Oh, it's good, keep going." They would have been like, "Lisa, like you tried. It was
Right.
a fun hobby. Like now go, resume your life, please." But they were like, "This is really good. Go for it." And I believed in it too. I had come to know 27 people. So this was my book about a young woman with a young woman. She's 50 years old with Alzheimer's, so
Right.
early onset
Premature.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Um, and I came to know 27 people living with early stage or early onset Alzheimer's, and I felt an enormous responsibility to them after having spent so much time with them. Like I was
Big.
in touch with them pretty much every day while I was writing this story, and I had a sense also that like if this book can get out there, it has a chance to be an agent of change and getting people to think about Alzheimer's because nobody wants to think about this thing. Like fiction is like it's kind of like this stealth,
That's
secret
right. No, it
agent.
is.
Like it's so powerful the way we can be like, here, read this book about something you would never normally read about. And now you're like, oh my God, you care about it so much after having read a story. But yeah, it was a chance for maybe people to not to think about Alzheimer's and to change the public's perception of it as oh, this is just a disease of the dying elderly and write you off to like, oh, what does it feel like to live with this?
Right.
Rather than just be someone who's dying of it. So I felt very driven by a sense of purpose by it that was beyond just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I published a book? It was like, no, this book could actually
You
help.
see, you know what you did? I tell you, the day my career took off, that I actually found a career in this writing thing where I sort of struggled, was the day I saw it as service. It happened almost accidentally, but I went from saying, what can I get from publishing? Because I had a lot of things I wanted, a lot of ambition and so on, to what could I give? And as soon as that happened, it was a subtle change. It all shifted, and there's something so powerful. In fact, my brother once told a story of when he was playing poker and he wasn't having fun. He wasn't doing very well. He doesn't doing it professionally, just with friends, but he was still kind of pissed off about how it was going. But he had his girlfriend had a daughter, and he said, "I'm going to pretend I'm playing for her college fund. I'm imagining that everything I earned is going to her college." And all of a sudden, he started playing better because there
I
was
love
something
that.
beyond just give me the money that he was
Yeah,
playing for. I think
yeah,
there's something powerful about it. It becomes about something bigger than your own
I
ego and your
agree.
own success and all that.
Yeah, yeah, the energy is different, and you're calling in different people available to help because now it's about building connections and like who could benefit from
Right.
this, and it's genuine. So yeah, I felt really driven to like, let me just at least give it a chance.
Right.
So I was giving myself a year to go from self-published to a big publishing house because I'm like,
Right.
I gotta be able to feed my family, otherwise
Yeah.
go back to the bench or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it did eventually became a bestseller, and they made a movie out of it. I think I might have even seen that movie. I watch a movie every Friday, so I forget all the movies I've seen. But but I think I might have seen it.
I won't go into the obvious joke here that you've forgotten whether you saw a
Oh,
movie about
that's
Alzheimer's, but that's all right.
right. Well, I should say we're dealing. My mother-in-law is dealing with that now. We're getting ready to
Oh,
put her
I'm
into memory.
sorry.
It's
That's
well,
tough.
she's 87. She's
That's
doing okay. Her
God bless
mother
her.
got it when she was in her 60s, I think. So anyway, so she's
Yeah.
doing
Love
fine. It's
that.
just this
Okay.
is the end. Um, so you you now have written, as we said, six. This is our sixth novel, your sixth novel, and each of them has dealt with some issue around what we call, I don't know, we can call it a disease or mental, but something dealing with the brain, right? Now, some people write mysteries that always involve politics. Some people, this is an obvious, it's a sort of an obvious choice for yours, but there has to be some like beyond just the marketing aspect of it. There had to be some actual passion about like, oh, let's do this disease, let's do that disease, let's do this condition. Is that,
Oh yeah. No, there's
yeah?
no marketing involved
I don't know.
whatsoever.
People
Yeah.
start getting a little like, well, okay, let's do the disease of the day. Let's write a book about that.
No, I've never
No.
approached it that way. No
Okay.
one's actually even come to me and suggested such a thing, which is,
Really?
I'm very
It's so
lucky. Yeah.
obvious.
I know, nobody has. Isn't
Oh,
that weird?
good.
Yeah, no, it's either, I would say all of the books are either out of curiosity or it's something that has affected my life and my family's life
Ah, okay.
personally.
All right.
So Still Alice was Alzheimer's, that my grandmother had it. That was she
Yeah.
was the inspiration. Left Neglected was curiosity. It was I had read The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks back when I was,
Yep. Yep.
in college. I was a teenager still. And there's a 3-page story in there. It's nonfiction. It's a clinical vignette of this
Yep.
patient who has hemispatial neglect. He's in a hospital bed and there's this cold disembodied leg in his bed and he can't make sense of like who put a leg in my bed. Like one of the
Right.
nurses must be playing a sick joke. Goes to throw the leg out of bed and he falls out of bed because it's his left leg. He doesn't know it's his. And that's the end of the story. And
Right.
like for decades it was bothering me. I'm like, what happens to that guy? Like,
Yeah.
how do you walk through a whole world if you're only aware of half of it? So I wrote that to answer that question that had been burning
Great.
in
Great.
me all those years. Um, Love Anthony's about autism. My closest cousin's son has a severe form of autism, so I
Mm.
wrote that for her.
Yep.
Inside the O'Briens is Huntington's. As a neuroscientist, my first job out of college was working as a lab tech at Mass General East in the Charlestown Navy Yard. And the lab down the hall in February of '93 starts screaming and hugging and crying, and like everybody stops. There's no walls. The whole
Right.
building you can see. I'm like, neuroscientists don't behave this way. What's happening? So everybody stops, and the news trickles down that they have just isolated the genetic mutation that causes Huntington's. It's the
Wow. You were
only thing
there.
that
You
causes
were,
Huntington's. We were there. And it was like, oh
wow.
my God, we've just witnessed this historic moment in all of science. They're going to cure this disease. It's the only
Right.
thing that causes it. And we're all these decades later, and we still don't have a treatment or a cure. So I wrote that book to generate some awareness. Um, what else have I written? ALS.
But,
Oh, the co-writer and co-director of the film Still Alice, Richard Glatzer, he was diagnosed with ALS just a couple of months
mm,
before he read the book and agreed to take on this project and co-directed that film, unable to speak,
wow.
drooling, paralyzed one arm,
Yeah.
typing
Yeah.
with one finger on an
Yeah.
iPad. And I asked him if I could write about ALS next and would he
Yeah.
share with me what it feels like. He said yes. And
Yeah.
then this one, bipolar disorder. I've been wanting to step into something that's categorized as mental illness. Now,
Mm,
interestingly, mental illness is a made-up term. There's no neurobiological, neurochemical, neuroanatomical reason to call any of these things something separate from any other neurological condition, but we do, and I think a lot of harm is done by that. Um, and I picked bipolar disorder because I had the feeling that it's kind of everywhere. Nobody's talking about it,
right.
at
Right.
least not in a compassionate, real way. Like there's so much misconception and judgment and shame and stigma around it. So I wanted to shed some light on it.
Well, and you chose as your protagonist a young stand-up comedian,
Mhm.
and you did some fascinating kind of research. I mean, I'm sure you did all your science
Yeah.
research as you must do. But then you went and you actually talked to, and why did you choose a stand-up comedian? Because I think it's a great choice, actually. But what was the thinking behind that?
Okay, there's a few. So one is that, this is bipolar disorder can be a pretty heavy subject at times, and so I wanted to introduce some levity into the story. I also love that just as humans, we often use humor to bridge and reach each other and connect over subjects that are uncomfortable or awkward.
Yeah.
I love the metaphor of the stand-up comedian. So if you're a stand-up comic, and any given minute to minute or show to show, if you're killing it and everybody's laughing and you're connected and it's working and it's like the best feeling, it's so euphoric, you chase that high, it's amazing. Kind of like mania. And
Right.
if you're
Right.
bombing and nobody's laughing and you're just so disconnected and you just feel horrible and it's the worst feeling and you're alone and you just want to crawl into a hole and die, it's depression. So it's this like to be able to regulate that kind of swing in connection and response and mood. It's like, oh, isn't that interesting? This is what people with bipolar have to deal with.
And
So
so you did some interesting research. You talked to some wonderful comedians who I'm a fan of. So who Amy Schumer, who I did not
yeah.
know dealt with it at all.
No, no, no. Amy Schumer doesn't have
Oh, you were
bipolar.
just talking to her about stand-up comedy.
Yeah, yeah. So Maria
Yeah,
Bamford, who
Maria
I also
Bamford.
talked,
Yeah,
she does have bipolar disorder,
yeah,
and she
yeah,
does
yeah,
talk about it openly on
yeah,
her Netflix special,
yeah.
a Netflix show, Lady Dynamite. She has a special on Amazon Prime called "Weakness is the Brand," which is hilarious. She
Oh,
talks
I
about
is
it
it
in there too.
new? Maria
No.
Bamford's one of my favorites,
She's one of
so
my
I would
favorites. So
love to.
yeah, I've got tickets to see her in Boston
Oh,
next month. I
nice.
can't wait. Yeah, she's phenomenal. So Weakness is the Brand. So I interviewed her. So she was a two for one. We talked about
Yeah.
comedy and then we talked about
Okay.
bipolar. But yeah, Amy helped me a lot with understanding just how how her career started to like where it
Right.
is now,
Right.
and it's just sort of growing up with all the dudes, how it's such a male dominated field to be in. So she was helpful there. But then I interviewed a lot of newer comics, a comic who's in residence out in Las Vegas, some who are in New York City pounding the pavement, others
Yep.
who were comedians in the 80s and 90s in Boston but do other things now. Yeah, and then I took a
Wow.
stand up. I had
Yeah.
to write. Yeah. So now I'm a novel. I'm a neuroscientist who became a novelist who now has chosen a main character with who is aspiring to be a stand-up comic, which means I have to know how to write stand-up comedy, which I didn't. So I'm like, all right, I gotta learn because I have to write good comedy.
Yeah.
So that
How
was
did
the
that go? Because
research.
comedy, I did sketch
Yeah.
comedy and I loved sketch comedy.
Okay.
And my brother and I did it as a team, and we thought about doing stand up. And I thought, hell, frickin' no, no.
Yeah.
I want people sitting down in seats. I don't want water glasses clinking. I don't want anybody talking back to me. But
Yeah.
you have to. And so you did a set. You did a set. Is that right? Did you
I
do it?
did
You
a
wrote.
set. Yeah. So I took the stand-up comedy writing class and
Okay.
I originally was like, "Hi, like so I'm taking this class because my main character who's only
Okay.
20 years old is going to be the comedian. So I'm going to write all my jokes as if I'm her." And the
Right.
teacher was just like, "No, absolutely not. You're going to write it as you 50-something-year-old lady. And then you can just trust that what you learn you're going to be able to apply to your character." So I was not happy with that, but he was so right. And yeah, so all of the comedy that I wrote in that class and for my 5 minute set was for me. And then I had to write Maddie's comedy separately. I did give her one joke from my 5 minute set, and it's the joke about how much she hates thongs. So
That
that's,
seems universal. That seems
I
that could,
figured that could apply to
right?
any age.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Wow.
yeah,
And so
it
you
was
did
fun.
it? You actually got up and did the 5 minutes somewhere?
Well, no, it's a little bit of a cheat. I did my 5 minutes, but the cheat was that this was like 2021, so it was still pandemic
Ah,
momenty.
yeah.
So we did it over Zoom. We invited family and friends. I could see all their faces in the little boxes, but it's not the same as being on a
Well,
stage with people
it's
in the audience. So, but it was a friendly crowd. Like it
yeah,
was, as it would be with the students, sort of
right.
it's like a recital, for God's
I
sake.
will say on one level though, it's going to be harder doing it on Zoom because in one way because you want that audience. You feel
I
when they
know the
laugh.
feedback. Honestly, the energy, because I do a lot of speaking. So
Yeah.
aside from writing, for all of the books I write, I become an advocate and
Yep.
I do a lot of speaking. Like I've been in speaking, I've been on speaker series on the same ticket as Barack Obama and Goldie Hawn and
Wow.
Jay Leno.
Wow.
Like yeah, I've done these things. So I do a lot of that. And yes, the audience makes a big difference. If you've got an audience who's with you, it just electrifies the night. It helps it. It's so good. So
Totally.
yeah, to just be talking to the screen, like the timing of it is a little wonky, but it's fine.
Well, at least you understood though, because there is a rhythm to stand-up comedy. There is a it's I think I have a client who's a very famous stand-up comedian who I work with who wants to write personal essays and so on and work with him. And we talk about, you know, there's a lot of crossover between good stand-up comedy and memoir in a way, in that you're having to take your life and turn it into art. But it's a certain kind of art, which is the joke, but you're still usually basing it on, like you said, thongs. based on probably having worn one at some point. And so, like, this is how do I turn it into something that's a work of art, which is a joke. And I think there's a lot of crossover. And I think some of the best public speakers in the world are comedians when they're whether they're doing the stand up or something else. They just know how to be in front of people and hold that space in a certain way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they're brilliant. I mean, the ones who are really great at it, like the Maria Bamfords, like they know how to write. They t
Yep.
to choose their words, the economy of language.
Yes. Economy. Thank you. Economy is everything in stand up, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, and then the timing of it all and the to be comfortable enough to let it be a relationship.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. It's
Yeah.
so cool.
All right. So what I was going to say is, so that was great. This all sounds interesting, but then there's the actual writing of it. And what is the thing? It doesn't have to be about the disease because there's more to life than diseases. God help us. What did you learn writing this book? What is it? Or how did you grow as a writer writing this book? Do you think?
Oh, wow. Well, it can't be about sorry, I'm still a little
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sorry, everybody. Um, yeah, the book can't be about the neurological condition. Like, no, it has to be about our shared human condition, really. So, what did I learn? Oh my gosh. Well, I definitely learned how to write stand-up comedy. I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I did have to get good enough at it so that, sorry, I
Yeah.
had to make sure that I could get to what would be her 5 minute set at the end of the book. And that 5 minute set would be used to communicate what she has learned about having bipolar disorder
Right.
and how to be okay with it and how, yeah, it's going to incorporate her understanding of, and this is one of the things I learned, the distinction between I am bipolar and I have bipolar.
I think, thank you. God, because I have a kid who's on the spectrum and
Okay.
just, it drives me crazy. The language around it, I feel like don't put a limitation. You don't know what the limit is. And the having an am, I just
Right?
feel like things change, man. I'm sorry, but things can change. You don't know how, but I
Yeah.
just,
And no one wants to be the sum total of one thing.
no.
Right. And so it's like if this diagnosis comes in and they're like, well, you are bipolar. And by the way, just as an age, like this is the average age of onset for bipolar is late teens, early 20s.
Interesting.
So just as you're like starting to figure out who you are, you've got one foot in adulthood and you're just trying to understand like, okay, well, what are my choices beyond how I was raised? Like who am I going to be? And in swoops this really chaotic, overwhelming diagnosis that is saying this is who you are. And if you believe that, then that is limiting, right? Because then everything else kind of falls away.
And this,
And
and
you
I
live to
just,
the expectation and the boundaries
yeah.
of what that condition is.
Oh, yeah.
But
It
it's like
drives me
what
crazy.
right. And then other people will also limit you because they're like, well, she's bipolar. And wow, it quickly you're dismissed, you're dismissed or you're distrusted, right? Oh, well, that's who you are. Then
Right.
I can't, I should be afraid of you, is
I,
the judgment. But if it's something that you have, then it's part of you. And then maybe it's smaller and maybe now it allows room and space for other things and it becomes something that maybe we can talk about. It's not so big and overwhelming and scary.
I think it's so important. Even my mother-in-law's got dementia, I guess, which I know is an Alzheimer's, but there's some similarities in terms of how it expresses itself. Um, yeah, she's forgetting a lot of stuff. I mean, but but other things have come through. She's actually funnier now than not just because she's saying funny things, but her actual sense of humor has increased. She's gentler in many ways.
Mm.
There's a certain authenticity that comes through, and the relationship with her in certain ways has been more profound from both my wife and me. This is her mom than when she was not before the thing kicked in because of what it is to be with her. So I just think there's sides to everything. And I know it's
Yeah.
seen as a tragedy, but I just don't see it as a tragedy. I know she doesn't want it, but there's certain good things that also she seems to forget things that she doesn't want to remember anyway, a lot of the times. No, it's true though, but like there's certain parts that just seem to filter. Anyway,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
want to get
well,
on a soapbox.
if it is, dementia is it's a symptom and something's causing it. So dementia is you're having an impairment with respect to language, memory,
Right,
cognition.
right,
And if it some of the reasons that can be causing dementia can also be damaging the neural pathways that connect your thinking brain, your
right.
frontal cortex, to your emotion center, your amygdala. So
Yeah.
you can become sort of disinhibited. And so a lot of like parents and society's rules of like don't say that or don't be impolite become disinhibited, and so you might have like a more easygoing, more disinhibited, funnier person.
She has shared some things with me that have surprised me, I have to admit
Right. So it
that.
can be this lovely, side effect, and where a lot of the symptoms can be hard and
Yeah,
confusing and
sure.
and challenging. Some of them can be welcome.
Yeah.
And it's nice when that happens. My grandmother was like that too. She had a lot of interesting disinhibitions that were allowed for some humor.
Well,
Um,
Lisa, you're a very interesting person. You've written
oh,
some
you
very
think
interesting books.
so?
Really great readable book. Good. I mean, we've gotten into all these heavy subjects, but really, it's just a great readable book, and so I
Thank you.
recommend it for everybody. But I'm not quite done with you, Lisa. So, okay,
Okay.
oh, but before we get to it, the book is again more or less Maddie, available where all fine books are sold. But I'm not quite done with you, Lisa. I want you to think about all the writing you've done. You've done so much of it,
Okay.
including stand-up comedy, and if it's taught you anything about life, just about life. It's taught you what?
Well, that everybody wants to matter. Everybody wants to be seen and heard and be loved, no matter what's going on with them, right? Everybody wants to belong. Like all of these conditions kick you out of belonging, and then you're lonely, and nobody wants to be lonely. It's the worst feeling. So we all want to belong. I think that's what my books have taught me. And we all have a right to. Like
Ah,
like as a human, we all have the right to be seen, heard, loved, and belong. Writing has taught me um to do it now. Like I said, I'm afraid every book. Oh, it would be very easy to give in to the fears. Oh, I can't do that now. Oh, what if it sucks? Oh, I can't do it. I'm gonna Writing has taught me to stay in the seat and to be comfortable being uncomfortable.